Thank you so much for this invitation. It's very special for me to be here as president of the International Publishers Association. Not everybody knows, but actually STM started as a small committee of the IPA, the International Publishers Association. And so at the IPA, we consider STM sometimes a daughter. I think that's not really fair. It's like a true, very vibrant sister organization now. So it's very special that I'm here at this anniversary. I'm also very happy to be invited to talk about a topic very close to my heart, diversity and inclusion. I will do a short introduction, kind of set the stage, and then we go to our stellar panel. It's all waiting, which also even shorter introductions. And then we have a panel discussion, and you are also invited to participate. And if you have no questions, don't worry, we'll find you and we'll volunteer you for a question or two. So, what is on the agenda here today? First, a quick definition. What is diversity and inclusion? And then the business case. It's very important that we're all fully aware of that. Then some highlights from the publishing industry. And then I go a little bit deeper on the diversity and inclusion around gender and sexuality. And then finally, how can we do inclusive publishing? So publishing for the visually impaired. I think a good definition of diversity and inclusion is, say you organize a party, diversity means you will invite everybody. You invite people of color and people who are white. You invite men and women, straight and gay. That is the diversity part. The inclusion comes that once they are at the party, you invite them to dance with you, to drink with you, and make them feel welcome. So this is a very, woolly definition, but I think it really makes the point. What is the difference between inclusion and diversity? If you have a very, very diverse board, that's very good. That's the first step. It doesn't mean that the culture in your company is inclusive. So that is something we all have to work on. Now, the first impression, of course, is when we talk about our industry, is that we're all white, middle class, and male. And I put some examples here, although I'm not so sure of Bob Maxwell on the left considers himself middle class. But it's even not that bad, actually. We have had some really strong, powerful women leading our companies. And this is across our industry, but just to highlight STM, so Sage is led by a very strong female leader. And then Nancy McKinstry has been a very successful CEO for many, many years. So, excellent role model there. And we provide also a platform for diversity. And you'll see a few examples here, going from Galileo Galilei to James Baldwin. These diverse voices are published by us publishers. So let's look at the publishing industry. This is not STM, this is a little bit more broader, the publishing industry, and I took 2 countries and where there are some good data available. And I'll get back to the data later. So first of all, majority, almost 8%, are female. This is quite remarkable. This is very a female industry with lots of female colleagues. In the UK, 90% is white British. And of that, 41 occupy some kind of executive board level roles. And we can argue at what level you start talking about executive, but it's certainly not 50%. And then in the UK, you have this unique thing, it's called the gender pay gap. You've probably all heard about it earlier this year. And so here we can track what are the salaries in the different quartiles. And we see that there is a gender pay gap for the industry, which is around 16%, meaning there are fewer women with high-paying jobs, and there are more women with low-paying jobs. And I give an example. There's a range. I took a neutral company, Hachette, and not an STM company, but I'm sure you know your pay gap yourself. So it can be as high as 25%. Now look at the US. Very similar. Also, vast majority is female. Also 80% white, so it was 90% British. Here we have also identification of people as straight or not straight, and so it's 88% straight. And we have data about that the vast majority is able-bodied. And so what illustrates here, and we took 2 countries where we have pretty good data, is that it's quite different. So, and that makes it also to assess how are we doing with diversity inclusion not that easy. We don't have the same metrics for every country, so we can easily compare that. And in fact, the UK is actually stands out that there is such a rich amount of data available on this topic. Right, so I'm presenting a study by McKinsey, who did a very broad analysis of a kind of, is there a correlation between diversity and performance? And they did so, like, I think 4 years ago, and they just released a new study with a larger sample, and which confirmed actually what they were thinking before. And so what you see is that companies who have more women in their board perform substantially better. So the two histograms are again these quartiles. So on the left is the top quartile, and on the right is the bottom quartile of diversity. And you see the more diverse, the better you perform. And there are two criteria here of financial performance. Now, if you look at boards which are ethnically or culturally diverse, you see the same pattern. And so this is like a very clear case for diversity that drives financial performance. Now, according to the McKinsey report, what is it? What is it that really makes this difference? And that's diverse companies. They're better at attracting and retaining staff. They have a higher level of decision making. They're more innovative. I'll get back to that. They also have a better insight in their customers, because customers are increasingly more diverse as well. Employees are happier there. And the image, overall image, also improves of the company. Now you might think, okay, so this is a nice cherry on the cake. It's great, you know, you're a little bit diverse, you get a bit of a bonus. But it also works the other way around. There is a price to pay if you do not embrace diversity. Non-diverse companies perform 29% worse. Good. And another interesting correlation is between diversity and innovation. And we see that more diverse companies are clearly more innovative. So if you are, for instance, just enable equal pay, you see that the revenue you get out of innovation already jumps like 13%. So a very nice case here that diversity drives innovation. So what are the challenges? So one of the challenges is that it takes a long time. If you read the reports, if you would decide today you're going to be very diverse and inclusive, to really have that embedded in your culture takes like about 8 years. And the McKinsey studies, which I referred, so there's a gap there for like 4 years, they didn't see much change actually in the 4 years, so it's slightly worrisome. And the other point is how to collect data. How do we know that we're doing well? If you're managing a multinational and you have offices all around the world, how do you know how you're doing in Japan versus Germany versus the US? So not so easy, but we're making progress. So a great example here is from the UKPA, the Publishers Association in the UK. They said, well, we are really going to tackle this problem. And I think they did so with ambitious goals. The initial focus is on gender and ethnicity. They have a charter. They have a network. They're going to have interns for minorities. Then there are events where they invite the minister. They are very active with unconscious bias workshops. And I cannot stress how important that is. If you want to tackle diversity and inclusion, we all have to tackle our unconscious biases. And rest assured, we all have them. I have them. Everyone on this panel have them, and you have them. They set ambitious targets. Actually, this slide was from last year, so it's now 4 years. And so they want 15% from minority colleagues and 50% from senior roles. And they have an award, so you know, HarperCollins won this year. And they're going to address LGBT in the near future. An example from my own company at Elsevier. So first, where we focused on was enabling our company to embrace diversity. So we are the signature of the Women's Empowering Principle. We have an outside company, Edge, who will certify how we're doing in different locations around the world. We did an audit for equal pay, and we've done a massive program of unconscious bias training for all the managers. And we also looked at that we have the right HR practices in place. But we do more. We also, for instance, sponsor advocate work for women in research, for instance, in the Global South. And we made this landmark study on global research, gender in global research. We also are investigating what does it mean, diversity for editorial boards, what does it mean for the peer review process. I think others are going to talk more about that. And what about reviewing standards for reporting of sex and gender in research? Just this report, Gender in the Global Research Landscape, it's maybe a bit difficult to see, but we looked at two periods, one before 2000 and one after, and that's why, so the top one is, say, a long time ago, and the bottom one is more recent, and female is in purple and male is in green. It's not traditional. And the good news is that if you compare these two periods, that there's an increase of female researchers. And also, now that we have all this information, we can look how the female researchers compare to male researchers in productivity, in citation, in popularity, and how many times their articles are downloaded, etc., etc. And what we see is that although women publish a little bit fewer articles than men, they're certainly cited as much and downloaded as much. And I just wanted to kind of, as two extremes. So for instance, in Brazil, if we compare the two periods, the percentage of women went from 38% to 49%, so parity, so quite an achievement. The same trend in Japan was different. It went from 15% to only 20%. So you see quite some differences per country. Good, let's look at another aspect of diversity inclusion. I'm the proud executive sponsor of Elsevier Pride. And we see a little bit the same patterns here, that diverse companies around LGBT, they're more creative, they're more innovative, and they're more competitive. Of course, they are doing a better job at retaining gay employees. But what I find very interesting is they're also more attractive to straight employees. And I'm sure if I'd be standing here 20 years ago, that would not be the case. Then in general, this is not about STM or publishing. The LGBT customers, they are a force to be reckoned with. So in 2020, in the US alone, they will spend $1 trillion and have a much higher buying power than many others. Gay couples spend more than straight couples. Having said all that, the studies also suggest that if you're LGBT, you're more likely to be treated unfairly at work, and you have to double the risk of a burnout compared to your straight colleagues. So there's still work to be done there. So I founded Elsevier Pride in 2013, and I just give you a bit of a flavor of what we've been doing. For instance, a workshop of how can I be myself at work. So you meet an editor and never met her or him before. The issue comes up. Do you disclose immediately that you're a lesbian or not, etc. We had a campaign for the gender-neutral toilet, which not everybody fully embraced immediately. Then bisexuality and intersex. The highlight of the year is what is called Pride Bingo, but somehow everybody refers to it as drag queen bingo. This is where we, in our canteen, we play bingo. It's a fundraiser for Amnesty Pride, but the MC is a drag queen. Actually, last year we had 2 drag queens. When I first heard about this plan, I couldn't really get my head around these drag queens in the canteen where we eat our cheese sandwich, but it's the absolute success. It happens every year in the end of July, and my colleagues, they already asked me in May, when is it going to happen? And I think half the people there are allies, are straight allies. So this is certainly not an event for the gays, by the gays. This is an event for everybody. We are also very proud that Elsevier is the first corporate sponsor of the AIDS Monument, and we organize more serious, deep discussions, for instance, about PrEP, the medication that can prevent HIV, where we can pull in the editor of the Lancet HIV. We started with 1, we now have 10 chapters around the world, and I really want to highlight here Chennai. This is in a country where homosexuality was illegal until recently, but we had a landmark conference there about being gay at work, which was in all the local newspapers and really made a difference there. Finally, so you can be inclusive in many ways. And I think it's very important we also think about how to deal with colleagues with disabilities in the publishing industry, and also how do we publish for people who are, for instance, visually impaired. And so the Accessible Book Consortium is doing this. There are worldwide more than 250 million people who live with some kind of impairment. And it's very important, I think, is when we make our publications available in digital form, that we immediately do that in the right format so that visually impaired have access to it. So born immediately in an accessible way. And even Lady Gaga is supporting this. All right, thank you very much. And I